Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started right now? Second here. Okay, great. All right, so today we're excited to have another live session with all of you. We're really talking today about the app and about navigating different situations that you may run into while you're using your neural sleeve. So kind of the app navigation as well as troubleshooting. Again, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A throughout. And going to the next slide, again, today we really want to stay focused. With all of these sessions, we choose 1 to 2 related topics, and we really do a deep dive so we can answer any questions about that. We know that you may have a variety of other questions about your neural sleeve experience or about your account. And if that's the case, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact support@psionic.com. Today, again, is really about these 2 topics, which are about troubleshooting and navigating the app. And then just a reminder, and I mentioned this previously, but want to say it one more time because we've had some new people join. We will be recording this session and we will post it to our support pages on our website, and we'll share this after the meeting. And so without further ado, I will kick it over to Raina and Kelsey to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Raina. I'm one of the mobility specialists here at Psionic. I also do a lot of support. So a lot of the troubleshooting that you guys have done in the past or onboarding appointments, some of you might have met me in that way. So yeah, I've been with Psionic since about 2021, full-time now for almost a year, and it's the best job I've ever had. All right, Kelsey.
Thanks, Raina. My name is Kelsey Holtzleiter. I am a customer champion with Psionic. So oftentimes you've probably interacted with me either via email or phone call to talk about the sleeve and maybe our ordering process, as well as helping with troubleshooting. I joined Psionic back in June, so I'm a relatively newer member of the team, but very happy to be here and really excited about what Psionic is doing.
Awesome. And then we also have Becky and Shannon from the Psionic team who are joining the call today. So they are here as well. And we're looking forward to a great discussion.
All right, so I'm going to kick it off here. We'll start off with some terminology, going over some commonly used terms that we may be using throughout support calls to help give you some insight on what it is we might be talking about. So first off, we have the Psionic app. You can see it's located here on the phone screen. It's a teal box with a little C in it. This is something that you would be downloading initially in the onboarding, or not the onboarding, the ordering process to upload your recording of your baseline gait. So you should have it on your phone when you receive your sleeve. You can always search your phone to find it, but this is what it looks like. All right, the hamburger menu is one that throws quite a few people. It looks like 3 stacked horizontal lines, and it's located in the upper left-hand portion of your screen. Within that, it's menus for our home button, our settings, history, help, and the option to report an issue if you're having an issue. All right, so you can see we're clicking it and we've got each of those options. We've got the home, settings, history, help, and then reporting and issues down at the bottom. Perfect. All right, home screen. This is your home screen. So essentially it's where all of your different various gait protocols, cycle, and exercise library is located. You can always access this by going back to that hamburger menu we were just talking about and selecting home if you end up on a different page. The control unit icon is located in the upper right-hand corner, and this is where all the information about your actual control unit is stored. So it's a pretty key place for understanding if you're paired to Bluetooth, what your battery percentage looks like, as well as information on firmware upgrades. And you can see that here, this control unit is at 97%, and it is connected. If we clicked settings, we'd get those other options as well. Firmware, as you go into settings, there's some information on firmware version or to upgrade firmware, which we'll go over a little bit later. But this is what that firmware information screen would be looking like. And that's talking about the type of software that's currently downloaded on your control unit. All right, so now that we've gone through some basic terminology, I'm going to open it up to any questions that we might have.
Kelsey, we have a few questions about cycle mode.
Okay. We'll go into more detail about cycle mode in a little bit. It's not something that is active for everybody initially. It's something that your mobility specialist has the opportunity to turn on for you if you express it. You can also email us at support@psionic.com and we'd be happy to help turn that on for you. Just as a note, it's recommended to only use that cycle mode on a stationary bike. And it's specifically, the algorithms are specific for an upright bike. Any other questions?
There is a question about rowing, not yet, but we will put that in as a product request. Awesome. All right, I think that's it. And again, just continue to answer or to ask questions in the chat throughout, and we'll continue to answer them throughout the session.
All right, so next we're going to go through an actual app walkthrough so we can show you how to navigate throughout the app. Okay, so earlier we talked about that home button. So you can tap on home and it will bring you home at any point, and that's located in the hamburger menu. And next we'll talk about settings. So we're going to click the hamburger menu, go to our settings. I'm going to turn everything off initially, and we'll go through each of these. So if we are creating a session, if we want to make sure that that session gets saved in the app, we're going to make sure that we select that create upload recordings. Otherwise, we won't save that data. Next, location tracking. We're not necessarily tracking your individual location, but we use that to improve our algorithms. So it's something that, if you don't mind, we'd like you to have on. Allowing cellular uploads is pretty important. So if you decide that you want to use your sleeve outside of your home and away from a Wi-Fi network, you'll need to have this on in order to upload your session using your cell phone's data plan. Advanced FES settings are something that I would recommend consulting your mobility specialist about. It gives you more options, including pulse width and frequency for each of your electrode configurations. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. Metric just puts our units in the metric system or imperial system. Reset, I wouldn't recommend clicking. It's just going to turn off all of these settings to a factory kind of standard. And then signing out, don't touch that unless you're instructed to do so by one of your technicians. And then finally, I just want to call out at the bottom, you can see V1.14. That's the software or the type of app version that I'm currently running on this phone. And so if you want to check in and see what version you're running, that's one place to check it if we send an email that we've launched an update. All right. So history, we're going to go back to that hamburger menu. This is where we can see previous session data. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom here. You can see all of my previous sessions. As we scroll up, you can see average stride length, average gait speed, and my average daily activity. Each of the gait speed and stride length are only counting, and average activity, we're only looking at moving time towards those metrics. All right. Help screen is where you can also be viewed at psionic.com/tutorials. It's going to take you through a series of videos that can help you use your sleeve better or problem solve as you go through them. So you can see there's quite a few options. If you prefer to watch these on a desktop, though, going to psionic.com/tutorials, you can access those there as well. All right, if you need to report an issue because something is going wrong with your sleeve or not functioning as you're hoping, you're going to open that hamburger menu and select report an issue. If you see a prompt like this come up, it's because your control unit is not connected to your sleeve. And a critical piece of getting the valuable information to our engineers is making sure that you've got a Bluetooth connection. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're just going to go from this report an issue page back to our home page. We're going to click the upper right hand corner and then make sure that that control unit is connected. It's connected if we see that battery percentage. We'll go back to report an issue, and then you'll detail and describe in the best detail that you can what you're experiencing. So we have as much background information to share with our engineers as possible because we want to solve your problem as quickly as we can. When you hit submit, you'll see a little wheel. Make sure that that goes all the way and finishes a full circle so that we for sure have received your issue, and we'll reach out to you via email when we do. All right, control unit icon. Again, that's located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If we click on that, we can see multiple pieces about your control unit that are pretty important. So here you can see it's connected. We've got 97% battery. That will adjust based on what the battery level is for your particular control unit. The disconnect and restart buttons, you don't need to use most of the time, but the settings gear there is pretty important. If we click on that, we have options to change the control unit's name. Some of our dual sleeve users will change each of their control units names to right side or left side. So it's a little bit easier to figure out which one may be having an issue or what charges for each one. We can unpair if you've got a new phone. Marina will kind of touch on that, I think, a little bit later on today. We've got version info to see what type of version yours is running. And then if you need to start a firmware upgrade, we can click that bottom button there to start the firmware upgrade. So we'll go ahead and do that. It will take you through a couple of steps to configure. And then if you don't have an upgrade available, it will let you know at that time. Otherwise, it'll take you through some instructions on how to do that. Perfect. All right. So next, we're looking back at that home screen. This is going to be where you access all of your assisting programs, cycle, gait, modes, exercise library as well. You can scroll through. You might see different options for yourself and fewer or more. We usually turn those on based on which algorithms are going to best meet your needs. And it's worth a discussion with your mobility specialist if you have questions about that. All right, so if we select our gait mode, the first step here is going to be calibration. And that's a key piece of your sleeve's functionality. This is something that needs to be done each day and or each time that you put your sleeve on. So essentially each time that you place the sleeve on your leg, you may be placing it in a slightly different spot, and it's important that the sleeve knows where you're at in space. Another thing to consider with this is in the standing mode, you're going to make sure that you're first standing and facing one direction. If you have a particularly wide base of support, you might step your feet a little bit wider if that's how you walk, or a little bit narrower if that's how you walk, but trying to mimic kind of what that stance looks like for you when you're moving. When you're in position, you're going to select I'm ready. It's going to count down, and then we're going to move to the next one. So this one's seated in the same direction with your leg outstretched. When you're there, you'll select I'm ready, and it will begin. Okay. So next, that brings us to our electrode configuration screen. Each of those tiles at the top represent an electrode within the app and on the sleeve. We're going to turn those on here, and we're looking at the shin, so I'm going to turn on the dorsiflexors first. If I hold down on a tile, I can actually change the intensity of that individual electrode to better help me and my needs. And then down here, I have frequency because advanced mode is turned on, pulse width, as well as intensity. We're going to move up by intervals of 10. That's a safety feature. And when we're ready to test, we're going to click the lightning bolt in the center. If advanced mode is too much and you want it to go back to basic, you can click the basic text down below the lightning bolt, and that will bring you to that basic viewpoint. And it looks like a slider bar for us. So you can adjust as needed, again, going up by intervals of 10 before we have to test. And we can go back to advanced by selecting advanced below the lightning bolt. All right, we're gonna go next. I'm gonna turn on each of these electrodes here in each muscle group, making sure that I test each one as I go. And then selecting next, we'll go to quad here next. And this is definitely a vital step. You don't have to turn on each of the electrodes. You're going to pick the best configuration for yourself. All right, when we see this skeleton, that's a cue that we've made it through and we're into our gait mode. So let's talk about that. Gait mode, we know we're here if we have the skeleton on our screen. You can actually change your view of the skeleton that you're seeing by holding down on that window and kind of moving around. This can be a good way to check your calibration. You want to make sure that skeleton looks like the position that you're currently in. As I'm walking, you'll see just the turquoise lighting up on the side there of the skeleton. That represents which muscle groups are active. If they're moving through, we know that we've got probably a decent calibration. I'm going to scroll through the window down below. You can see step count there as I'm moving. We've got gait speed based on each step. Go. And we also are able to measure stride length with each step. And this is where that data for our history screen gets pulled from. All right, we're in gait context, and gait context is able to detect where you're at. So right now it can tell I'm walking, I'm going upstairs, or I'm standing still. Down below that, we've got our slider bar. The slider bar is really important to make sure that you've got a proper simulation. If it's pulled down like this, it's going to affect every single electrode in the sleeve and diminish the intensity of it. So you want to make sure it's all the way to the right if that's appropriate for you. For most people, that's true. We can also change the configuration of each individual muscle. So I'm going to click shin, and if I need to turn on either more simulation or less for that particular muscle group, I'll sit down, test it out, and then go back. If I'm done, I'm going to select pause and then stop on the left. And a prompt should come up if I've changed my settings. If I want to save those settings, I'm going to click OK. All right. Exercise mode. So first, let's talk about each of the different versions of our exercises. For this one, I'm just going to demonstrate what seated hamstring looks like, but each of them have the same options. We've got muscle activated in the upper left of the screen. That's going to sense where your muscle is contracting and provide an assist to that contraction that you've started. Timer activated, it's going to be a set window of time. Oops. We'll go back to that for just a second. It's going to be a set window of time of stimulation. So it's not necessarily, it's going to tell you when to activate, and you're going to activate in that window. Biofeedback is going to respond to your own impulse. So as you contract that muscle, it's going to measure how much contraction there is and give you some feedback on that. And then if you're ever unsure of how to complete that particular exercise, you can click the tutorial tab to give you a breakdown or video of how to do that. This one also has a slider bar that I want to point out. So if you notice a decrease in stimulation, just make sure that slider bar is all the way to the right. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we're going to click muscle activated stimulation in this demo. And this one's going to provide that assist. So once we click it, it's going to ask how many reps we want to complete. So I'm just going to say 10. And initially, there's kind of a calibration phase for it to understand how you're moving. So we're going to click next to go through those 3 reps, in which it's kind of just testing. It's not going to provide any stimulation. So I'm going to go forward with my foot, and then I'm sliding that foot back, following that count forward for 3, and then sliding back for 3. And then one more like that to finalize that kind of calibration phase, and we'll click next. So now it's going to be providing stimulation, and I'm just going to follow the cues on the screen. So I'm sliding my foot forward for 3, 2, 1, not getting anything until I come back and I'm doing the active portion of the exercise. So getting that stimulation from the sleeve here as I return. And we'll go ahead and click pause and stop. We'll end up saving our settings if we need to, if we've changed anything about those particular settings in the hamstring. All right, cycle mode is the final piece that I want to talk to you guys about. And that is an algorithm that's specifically designed for upright bikes and should only be used on stationary equipment. It actually is only using the hamstrings and quads. So we'll go through the calibration there with those. Making sure if you need to calibrate, you can. If you already have for the day, you can click skip. And then we're going to turn on each of these muscle groups, test them, make sure that we're getting proper stimulation. And we'll go to hamstring, same thing. Selecting what's going to work best. Now it's only going to be using, like I said, hamstrings and quads for this particular algorithm. So as I start cycling on my bike, it's going to be firing those different muscle groups. You can see again, we've got those teal groups on the right, indicating that those are receiving stimulation. Slider bars at the bottom, so just be mindful of that. And you can always change the intensities by clicking each individual muscle group and then stopping to save. All right, let's open it up for questions.
Great. There was one question, and Becky actually answered it in the chat, but I thought it would be helpful if she just talked about it. So a customer asked, should I leave the sleeve on even when I know I won't use it again for a few hours? Becky, if you don't mind just kind of providing that answer for the group.
Yeah, sure. So I think I commented that it's absolutely fine to keep the sleeve on all day, even if you are not using it for stimulation. Some people find it more challenging to take off and put back on rather than just keeping it on and turning it off. But that being said, with sort of prolonged wear, some people do experience some skin irritation. So if that is occurring, then we do recommend you take the sleeve off and let your skin breathe and give it a rest from the sleeve.
Great. And then there was another question, will the sleeve still count time when in pause mode? And Domenico Pizzaturo, Psionic's Chief Product Officer, added a comment there, and I'll just read that to everybody. Or actually, Domenico, do you want to speak to it? Actually, let me read it for him. So during pause, the time counter will keep on going, but that time won't be used to calculate your metrics in the history screen. So in the next version of the app coming out next month, more to come on that, and we'll do a live session when we release that one as well. We're continuing to work, improve all those metrics to eliminate the time that you're not moving. Okay. And then there's another question. Is it better to do the exercises when the sleeve is first put on later in the day, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I can answer that as well. Generally speaking, generally speaking, it doesn't matter. It's personal preference or what you have sort of established with your mobility specialist. So if you have questions about an exercise program or when to incorporate exercise with your walking, you can reach out to support@psionic.com. We can connect you to your mobility specialist. Everyone is a little bit different in their goals and desires. So, but in general, it does not matter if you do gait or exercise first.
Great. And there's one more question. Can you provide gel pad condition feedback through the app?
I'm happy to answer that. We currently have a beta testing program that we're collecting data on how the gel pads are wearing. And the goal is for that to tell you when to change them. But you're welcome to sign up with that. Just email us at support@psionic.com and we can get you signed up.
Great. And then there's a question from someone, if they're wearing the sleeve all day, would they turn it off or put it on gait context?
So if you're going to be wearing the sleeve for a long duration of time and you're not going to be moving, my recommendation would be to turn it off so that you're preserving your battery life as best as possible. But it's ultimately your decision. If you're seated, it's not going to be providing stimulation. You just are going to be running battery even if you aren't actively moving around.
Great. And there was just one more question with it, basically cover the same thing, which is will it extend battery life? And yes. Turn it off. Do you mean hit the pause button? So no, in this case, there's a full power down, and we'll actually cover that just a little bit later in this session. So you can see the walkthrough for how you actually perform the full shutdown versus just the pause, unpause, which would be a single press. Great. Okay, there is a question about through airport security. Yes, you can contact support@psionic.com. We have TSA forms. We'll provide you a copy of your prescription, and then there's also a special TSA card that you can carry. Many of our customers travel and go through TSA wearing their neural sleeves. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to one question about in-gait context. The stride length steps, a new feature. So yes, that was rolled out in the last version of the app where we added additional metrics as well as trends. Great.
All right, I'm going to pass it over to Raina.
Great. I wanted to just quickly address the end of that last question that came through as far as the app draining phone battery. Your interface won't automatically sleep, so that will run down your phone battery. So if you just time out your screen, that will help preserve some of the battery. The question was to preserve phone battery, I always quit the app. Does the app now drain phone battery life? So that's just something to think about, is making sure your screen is asleep to preserve some phone battery. All right, so we're going to go through some basic troubleshooting. When we report an issue, as Kelsey talked about earlier, we need to remember that our control unit needs to be turned on and connected via Bluetooth, and then have it plugged into your sleeve. You don't have to be wearing your sleeve on your body. This way, the logs get uploaded. So anything that's happening in the control unit gets uploaded into this report and issue, and then it gets submitted to the engineer so they can take a look at it and then interact with Kelsey or me so that we can give you some troubleshooting steps and figure out what's going on. So you'll do that by going to the hamburger menu, reporting an issue, typing it in, and submitting it. So power cycling your device. Most of the time, the first thing we're going to have you do is restart your phone and restart your control unit. If you have any issues restarting your phone, we're happy to help you walk through that process, but we're going to talk about power cycling your control unit. So here's a brief video on it. What you're going to do is you're going to press and hold the power button for about 3 seconds. The light is going to turn orange and then fade out. Then you'll press the button one more time and the light will turn green. You have successfully power cycled your device. So this is usually the first step in troubleshooting. As with anything in tech, you just want to make sure that you've got a fresh start. Okay.
Great. And then just the first piece of that was when we were referencing turning it off completely. You would just leave it off at that point in time.
Yes, and so you can pause it in the app to stop any stimulation. Sometimes based on the protocol that you're running, you might get some random zaps here and there if you move your legs when you're sitting, or if you're standing at the kitchen sink doing dishes and you're just shifting your weight and you don't want to get those random bits of stimulation. I recommend just pausing it in the app. But if you're sitting down for a meeting that's an hour long, or you're just hanging out, I would recommend, if you can, sometimes it can be hard to feel the button through your pants, just go ahead and power down your control unit to conserve energy. That being said, our control unit's life should last for about 8 hours, and we don't really recommend wearing it longer than that for reasons Becky talked about earlier, just preserving your skin integrity. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about are Bluetooth connectivity problems. So I'm sure a handful of you, at least in here, have collaborated with Kelsey and I on this specific issue. These might be some screens that you see. All of them reflect a disconnected or a Bluetooth disconnect. So there's no communication between your phone and your control unit. So it can look like the little blue banner at the top of the skeleton screen. It can look like the control unit with this yellow light coming out. You might not see your control unit connected and the control unit icon. All of these are pretty good indicators that we need to do something with your Bluetooth connection. All right, so the first thing that you'll do here is you will go into the settings on your phone. We have a screenshot here for iPhone and one for Android. And you're going to go to your Bluetooth settings and you'll see your Psionic Neural Sleeve identifier. And for iPhone, you'll click on that little eye and it'll give you the option to forget your control unit. You'll go ahead and forget it from your phone. And same thing with Android here. You would select your Psionic identifier with the gear and it'll provide you the option to forget. This is cutting off the connection. So we're starting fresh. We're disconnecting from our control unit. And then we are going to plug your control unit into the wall using the charging block and cord that we provided for you. You're going to click on the control unit icon and you'll follow the pairing sequence, which means that you will press the button on your control unit. The light will turn blue. This indicates it's in pairing mode. You'll see it pop up on your Psionic app and you can select it. And then your phone will ask you if you want to pair, and go ahead and pair with your device. So note that your control unit can only be paired with one device at a time. We do get this question a lot. People like to go back and forth, or want to go back and forth between tablets and phones. We recommend that you just pick a device and you stick with it, because we can go to the next slide. What you will need to do if you have a new phone is go through this whole process. So you will unpair and forget from your phone, and then you have to go through the whole process again with your other device every time you try to switch. However, if you get a new phone and say you traded in your old one and you no longer have access to the old one to manually go into the settings and forget your control unit, you're going to reach out to support@psionic.com, because we have another step that we will need you to take in order to pair with your new device. Okay, hardware related issues. This is different. So the Bluetooth connection is the connection between the phone and the control unit. The hardware connection is the connection between the sleeve and the control unit. So you might see one of these prompts to plug your control unit into your sleeve, put it in your pocket, and then plug it in. I do want to give a little plug here, no pun intended, for putting your control unit in your sleeve before you plug it in. We want to do what we need to do to protect that cable, that connecting unit, from the sleeve to the control unit. So putting it in your sleeve and then plugging it in helps prevent unnecessary pull and bending that you might get if you plug it into your control unit and then try to put it into the pocket. If you find it difficult, whether it's with hand dexterity, hand weakness, to plug it in once you have it in your pocket, we recommend going ahead and putting your control unit in your sleeve and plugging it in before you put the sleeve on your body. All right, so now that we've seen what these hardware connection related issues might look like, we're going to look at the troubleshooting steps. Most of what this is providing us with as much detail as possible to give to the engineers. So you're going to report an issue through the hamburger menu of the Psionic app, making sure that you have a Bluetooth connection with your control unit. Ideally, you'd plug it into your sleeve. You don't have to be wearing it, but if you're getting that prompt that says plug your control unit in and it's plugged in, it doesn't really matter if it's plugged in or not. We need the Bluetooth connection to upload the logs for the engineers to look at. Another test we will have you do is unplug your control unit from your sleeve, and then you're going to plug it back in. And when you plug it back in and make that connection, you're going to want to observe for 3 blinking green lights. We can play that video again here. Sorry, I was talking fast. So those 3 blinking green lights indicates a proper connection between the sleeve and the control unit. So when you take note of this, please send us any screenshots of the messaging that you're getting in the app, along with the results of this test that you've just performed on your device. Let us know if you do or you do not see the 3 blinking green lights, and that will help our engineers with the troubleshooting as well. Again, email the screenshots to support@psionic.com, and either Kelsey or I will help you out from there. All right, simulation errors. These ones are really common. Most of the time, it's a pretty good indicator that it's time to change your gel pads. However, there are other reasons you might be getting these, and we will just briefly cover gel pad life preservation and what to do here. So basically, those little warning signs indicate that there's not a good connection between your skin and the gel pad. So go ahead and we can go to the next one. So just some reminders here for your electrodes is you want to first pat them down. Sometimes it's just a matter of they didn't initially have contact with the skin when you put the sleeve on. So you just want to rub down your leg, make sure they have contact. You can retry the connection at that point. If you're still getting these errors, I would recommend just making sure you don't have any lotion or oils on your leg, trimming any extra leg hair. Please don't shave right before using the sleeve. You're creating micro tears in your skin that could be irritated with the stimulation. So we want to avoid shaving. right before using these sleeves. So in general, I recommend to the people that I onboard that they take up a nighttime routine of shaving and moisturizing in the evening, so then they don't have to worry about cleaning their skin off first thing in the morning before they put their sleeve on. You can also put a small drop of water on each electrode and just kind of rub it around to kind of bring some life back into it if you're trying to preserve or extend the life of the electrode. And if none of the above work, go ahead and report an issue. This sometimes can indicate a broken electrode. Okay. Calibration issues. So Kelsey touched on the calibration earlier. There are a few reasons we might want to recalibrate. You'll see in the skeleton screen here, it's kind of wonky. It's not walking. You don't see the lights on the muscle groups lighting up. This is a good opportunity to recalibrate. So you'll stop, you can save your new settings, and then you're going to reconfigure. So once you click on reconfigure, you'll be back to the calibration process. It's really important to make sure that once you're in each of these positions, the standing or sitting, that you stay in them until you see the green check mark, and make sure you do both of them facing the same direction. Typically, this will help that wonky skeleton. You'll have to proceed through each muscle group again just by clicking the lightning bolt in the next each time. And then you get back to your screen, and now we're walking and the muscle groups are firing. All right, that was it for the basic troubleshooting. There might be other things you guys have questions about, and we're happy to tackle those.
Yep, and I think we've been answering a lot of the questions as we've gone. We've had some great feedback. If there are any other questions to put in the chat, and then just for anyone who missed in the beginning, this session is being recorded. We will post it on the support pages of the Psyonic website, and then we'll send you links to those pages as soon as we're ready to publish it. But we will have this for people to revisit. We know that you all have enjoyed watching them and rewatching them. We also did recent sessions specifically around skin maintenance and electrode wear, as well as the most recent session, which was all around donning the neural sleeve and placement for dorsiflexion. And so when the team touched on settings earlier, there's a much kind of more in-depth look at setting your parameters for your specific leg and for your mobility. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I just was going to say the question about not seeing the muscle groups firing. So that is a pretty good indicator that you might need to recalibrate. However, sometimes we're seeing this happen as our users have had their sleeves for longer. You might, quote, outgrow your gait protocol. So if you don't have, it could also indicate a time to connect with your mobility specialist to talk about changing your gait protocol. So that is something to consider as well.
There are a few more questions. There's one question around gel pads. So a lot of the gel comes off and sticks to my skin when removing the sleeves. How do I prevent this? And what is the best way to remove the gel from the skin?
So I'll start with removing it from your skin. I would just take a damp cloth and wipe your skin off. Something that we talk about a little bit, I'm not sure if this was in the gel pad AMA, but tacking your skin down. So you're gonna wanna hold your skin down and slowly peel the electrode off of it. If you pull too quickly, chances of leaving residue or the entire electrode are higher. So you wanna make sure also that you don't have any extra hair in the area that will hold on to it a little bit and leave some residue too.
Thanks, Rena. Two things. So one, there was a question just to make sure that the things we're covering are for troubleshooting only, not things that need to be done regularly or often. That's correct. This is just kind of first steps for troubleshooting types of messages you may receive. And so I'm giving you some tools to take initial steps to see if you can resolve it. And then if not, information to provide us if you ever have an issue and need help. And then there's one other. Go ahead.
I was just going back. Someone had asked a question about when to just email support versus when to report an issue through the app. It's always best to just report an issue through the app. That's kind of our first priority with things when we see them come in, is to manage issue reports. So doing that will just make sure that it has our attention, and we have as much information from your control unit as possible moving forward.
Great. And then there's a question that I thought maybe Becky could address around progressive MS and newest MRI shows new lesions in the T10, T11. My guess is that we'll want you to contact your mobility specialist or contact support, but Becky, I don't know if you want to add anything else there.
Yeah, I will certainly add to that. So in MS, it's common to have lesions within the brain and spinal cord. Some people may have lesions just in the brain. Some people may have lesions just in the spinal cord, and some both. The psionic neural sleeve is indicated for people with brain and spinal cord conditions. So it does not prohibit you from using the sleeve by any means, and can still be of great help. We do see some there may be changes in, I don't want to say effectiveness, but in programming, if there are lesions in the spinal cord, and something to monitor. So as Anne said, it's great to reach out to your mobility specialist if you are seeing that the sleeve in its current setup is not effective. And that goes for anyone really. If there are changes over time, we are always here and happy to help adjust the settings and parameters to accommodate your current gait pattern.
Great. There's a question. Sometimes it feels like not all the electrodes are firing. Is there a way to check that all are firing? Maybe I need to change the stimulation for different electrodes in the same muscle group. Can you help me do that?
Yeah, so what you'll want to do is just make sure they're all enabled initially in the screen that shows that electrode configuration. So if it's the shin, the like teal and orange electrodes for the shin, that would be the first place that I would check. And if it just feels like you're not getting stimulation through one specific one that looks like it turned on, I would keep in mind that a lot of times some of these diagnoses that we see also result in some decreased sensation in some areas. So I would just keep that in mind. If you're really concerned about it, you can reach out to us. We can connect you with your mobility specialist, and you can kind of move forward from there.
I'll also just add that the way the current flows, you most likely won't feel the stimulation like in each of the individual electrode areas. The current is going to pass between those. And so it sometimes just feels like the general area of the thigh, for instance, and not the individual 6 electrodes or 4 electrodes or whatever electrodes you have turned on.
Great. Are there any final questions from the audience? I believe that there were a few where there was a question about the specific behavior with an individual system. And so please contact support@psionic.com, as well as, or report an issue. If there's ever anything that feels unusual, it's always good to report an issue. Okay, there's a question. How do you deal with the contact if the sleeve is too large?
Reach out to support@psionic.com.
Yep. And there's a question about if you're operating a car, is it best to hit pause or stop when going to drive your car?
I personally would just hit pause. I guess it depends on how long you're driving for. If you want to conserve some battery, you can power it all the way down.
Great. Yep. And you can also exit your gait protocol. Let's see. If your gait improves as your muscles get stronger, when should you get reevaluated?
That's a great question. I hope that you have an open line of communication with your mobility specialist, and that you could reach out to us to connect them with you, or you can reach out to them to kind of discuss what your mobility goals are moving forward.
Great. And there is a question around instructions regarding adjusting parameters. Yes, we have an entire page on our support page, and we'll drop the link to that specific area of our website in the chat shortly. And then there's a question about gel pads. When a third of the gel is missing, will it still stimulate properly?
I would definitely change out your pad if that has happened. It would probably feel very uncomfortable to receive stimulation from that electrode.
And then replacement electrodes are included in the the neural sleeve overall. So you reach out to support@psionic.com when you need to get fresh fresh gel pads sent to your house. Okay, great. And then there are a few other questions about a specific situation with like muscle groups. If you could just reach out to support and send that over, and then certainly feel free to report an issue as well. Great. Only ever pause it. Yep. Yeah. And again, the power down is if you know you're not, there's a question about since I've had it since April, I only ever pause it. And so that's common, I think, for many people. But for some people who want to conserve battery, if, as Raina said earlier, if you're in a meeting or something like that, you can power it down completely so that it completely stops with the battery. Okay. Any other final questions? All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining. Yes, powering down completely. Yes, we'll send a link to the video, but you would just hold it down, hold on the button for 3 seconds until the light, it turns orange and then fades and turns off. And that's how you would power it down. And then to start it again, you just press the button once more. And so it looks like we've answered all of the questions. I think if there are any others, please send them to support@psionic.com. And again, if there are topics that you really want our team to cover, these sessions are intended to make the neural sleeve experience as valuable for you all as possible. And so please do send your requests for topics. If there are things you'd like us to revisit, we had a really active session on electrodes, and that was several months ago. And so, gel pads and electrode maintenance, if that's something you'd like us to revisit, these sessions are intended for our community. And so, so your perspective for us is how we'll kind of develop the curriculum for these sessions in the future. Great. And I think there's one other comment around kind of muscle weakness and wearing it. And so that's, we always recommend work with your mobility specialist based on your response as you're getting acclimated. Reach out and we'll help you figure out what the right kind of pattern of wear and the right ramp up period is. And I don't know if any of the mobility specialists want to speak more about that option or kind of the ramp up phase.
You can go for it, Becky.
Speak to it. Yeah, I mean, everyone is going to be different, and everyone has different levels of fatigue and muscle endurance. We generally recommend slowly ramping up the amount of time that you're wearing the sleeve every day or every other day to get to a point where you're able to use it throughout the day if that's your goal. But in the beginning, like I said, we generally start with, maybe an hour of active time per day at most, but again, depending on your current level of activity and your goals as well. In terms of muscle fatigue, that is something to monitor for sure. So oftentimes when you're wearing the sleeve and you're walking, you may feel great. And then the next day, that delayed onset muscle fatigue or soreness kicks in. And that may just indicate that you need to rest your muscles and take a break from the sleeve. And when you go back to it, maybe not wear it for the same amount of time so that you can slowly build up your strength and endurance and tolerance to wearing the sleeve.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you again. Again, as soon as this is ready to go, we will send the link to everybody that was here with the URL to the website. Actually, sorry, it looks like there's one more question around skin and maintenance, which is around the fabric cleaner. Is there a best way to remove the fabric cleaner?
The best way to, sorry, look at the question. Remove the fabric cleaner?
Yeah, it sounds like there was some sensitivity to the Lysol fabric spray.
Oh, I see. Becky, do you have any suggestions for that?
I don't have any specific suggestions other than to probably just wipe the sleeve down with a very damp cloth and see if you can remove any of the residue from the cleaner. And then let that air dry.
I see some suggestions in the group chat for finding a antibacterial fabric spray for maybe more sensitive skin.
Yep, it looks like Febreze and Tide have both been suggested.
So
Great.
I have my Febreze here.
Great. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Already getting a few requests and direct messages about future topics. So repeating a video on when to swap out the electrode pads. And if you want, or the gel pads, if you want a link to that video, you can find it within the support page. And I think that's just another resource that I'll just mention quickly, which is just psionic.com and then it's /support. And in that area, you'll have a variety of different topics around using the sleeve and maintaining it and cleaning and fine-tuning parameters. So a really helpful resource. Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. There's also a direct link there to the user manual. So we have our complete user manual that you can download and have available. And then if you do want a copy of that, you can always contact support@psionic.com as well. Great. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Please send any follow-up questions, and thank you again for joining us. It's so great for us to be able to see all of you and meet all of you, and thank you for all the engagement and questions and feedback as always. Thanks, everyone.